The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users. On demand on iTunes, on demand on YouTube, on demand at my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you are encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. And you might notice that today's comments, blog postings, the response to them have been a little divided. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated across the United States into 12 million additional households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. Welcome to the show. Well, President Obama was inaugurated twice on Tuesday, once at a couple minutes past noon. It was kind of interesting because by law, according to the Constitution of the United States, noon on January the 20th in Washington, D.C., local time, the president takes the oath of office. Well, they were running the program a couple minutes late. He took it a couple minutes late, but on CNN they were saying, but he is officially the president of the United States as of this second, even though he hadn't taken the oath of office. Then they flubbed the oath. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and then, of course, following him, the President of the United States screwed up on the oath of office. And then they said, well, maybe we need to redo this to make sure we got it right, because somebody might challenge whether Barack Obama is really the President of the United States. So at 7:35 p.m., and unfortunately with only a handful of onlookers, this is obviously a momentous occasion, because it was so unusual, but they limited it to a couple of pool reporters, no television cameras to record it. The only audio recording was a handheld audio device. But anyway, the President of the United States took the office a second time. This time, both he and the Chief Justice got it right. But with that little bit of nonsense past us, the president started right off the bat, as expected, issuing executive orders. One of them, by the way, I found very interesting. He froze the salary of White House staff members making over $100,000 a year. He said that those who are out there in the provinces, in the states, the rest of us, we have to tighten our belts. So do the people working for him at the White House. Largely symbolic, but meaningful nonetheless. Well, we thought that today would be a good day to bring in a very astute observer of the scene in Washington to talk to us about his observations about the first days of the Obama administration, and to give you opportunity to give your feedback as well. So we invited George Curry, who is a columnist at the Philadelphia Inquirer and the New Pittsburgh Courier. And I'm really wondering about your loyalties when it comes to an NFL football team, George, and a commentator on the Reverend Al Sharpton's radio show. George Curry is the former editor-in-chief of the National Newspaper Publishers Association News Service. He was also editor-in-chief of Emerge magazine, which, under his leadership, won more than 40 national journalistic awards. He is a former Washington correspondent and New York bureau chief for the Chicago Tribune. He was also a reporter for Sports Illustrated and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Writes a lot about race in America, and he still has a little bit of that sports fan in him, because I notice, George, that you've been writing about issues of race within sports recently as well. In 2003, the National Association of Black Journalists named George Curry Journalist of the Year. George Curry, welcome to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Gary. And you got to add that I live in Washington, D.C., so I have all kind of conflicting loyalties.
Yes, that's right, Washington, D.C. That's right. So you had a contender with the Redskins, or as one of the radio stations there refers to it as the football team from Washington, because they don't want to say the term Redskins. You have loyalties for a contending team from Philadelphia, and one of the last guys standing, Pittsburgh, as well. I presume then that when Super Bowl comes around, you're going to be with the Steelers and not with the Arizona team.
Well, that's interesting because I used to live in St. Louis when the Cardinals were before they moved to Arizona. So
that's true. That was your franchise.
You can't think of St. Louis being the Rams. You think of it being the Cardinals. They're now in Arizona. That's the nature of professional sports as well.
I know. And they had a hard time when they were explaining the history of the franchise on television. They had a hard time what the real history is as they try to set up this battle of epic proportions, which we really need, because since the election, we've got no big conflict going on in the United States. So thank goodness for the Super Bowl. George, let me just say that during the election campaign, there were some who made the race an issue during the campaign. I don't think a majority of Americans, but there were some. But I find it kind of interesting that once he was sworn in and he took the oath of office, we don't hear very much about race. We're down to brass tacks when it comes to Barack Obama.
There's no question about it. Gary, I just think that, when your house is on fire, you don't care whether the fireman is black or white. You just want somebody to bring the water. And there's no question that our house is on fire. Where we're fighting 2 wars, and our economy is in the toilet. We have other pressing domestic issues, and our infrastructure is going to hell and back. And so we have things that are pressing that we need to deal with. And I really think that even on people who are usually even more partisan politically are saying, look, we need to fix here. And the challenge, and John McCain said this well, the challenge is America said, we want you to work together, we want you to do some work, and put all the bickering aside, and that's the message of the election.
One of the things that Barack Obama has promised, and I believe he's taken steps to ensure a degree of this, is transparency in his government. One of the things I will give him on the positive side of the scale, a kudo here, is that when they redesigned the whitehouse.gov website, they allowed for feedback from the public, because he's very concerned, he said in a post-election interview, and I believe him, that he doesn't want to be so isolated that all he's listening to is his 10 closest advisors in the White House, and he's out of touch with what's going on there in the streets and the rural areas of the United States of America, and I think that's a positive thing. But there's been a lot of criticism already tossed his way over the second swearing in, how it was confined to just a handful of reporters. There were a lot of people who wanted to be in there to be able to report on this very unusual and momentous occasion. Was that the first stumble by this new administration, or just 7.5 hours into the administration, by closing that to much of the media?
No, Gary, as a person who used to cover the White House, I know that my colleagues make a whole lot out of nothing. I mean, this is inside the Beltway stuff that basically, it was a cautionary measure. The man was officially already sworn in earlier today. I think they should have allowed some video footage. That's what you got to really understand what we're dealing with today. We are dealing with the images, and so it wouldn't have hurt anything. I think it was a mistake, but it wouldn't have hurt anything to have TV cameras there. But at the same time, I don't think they have a constitutional right to be there, and therefore it's some big fluff. They didn't get what they wanted. Grow up. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you won't.